Thanks, Josh. I'm from CVGT Employment. It is really Freya just mentioned that in the chat. Mute myself. I'll have the next slide, please, Josh. So CVGT Employment offers a range of government, both state and federally funded programs, I suppose, contracts that are all related to employment. The ones that we are able to offer are disability employment services, Workforce Australia, the Transition to Work program, Parents Next, a youth employment program, and an apprenticeship or traineeship support through our group training organisation. We originally started in Bendigo, and that's still where our head office is based, but we have programs now that run all across regional Victoria and Melbourne, Tasmania, southern regional New South Wales, and a couple of locations in Sydney. We've been operating for 40 years, and we're a for-purpose and not-for-profit organisation, and have all relevant accreditations. The next slide, please. So I'm mainly here today to talk about our disability employment service. That is funded by the Department of Social Services, and the purpose of the DES, we'll call it DES program, we abbreviate everything, is to assist people that have a disability to find and maintain employment in the open labour market. And we also provide, DES providers also provide assistance to employers to support their new employees that may have a disability in the workplace. So some of the support that we provide is to prepare, obviously, for potentially working, finding and then securing paid employment, and then continuing that support once the person is employed to become fully comfortable, confident and independent in the job. So our support doesn't stop as soon as someone achieves employment. It can continue for as long as necessary, really, as long as the person continues to need our support and wants our support. So there's no time limit on that support. There are eligibility requirements to access DES, but I'll come back to that in a second. The DES program, or the DES contract, is held by over 90 organisations across the country, and then they operate the DES contract throughout hundreds of locations. So just quickly, I'll just come back to the eligibility requirements for DES. So basically, to be eligible, a person must be of legal working age, not be in full-time study. The exception to that is those that are in their final year of secondary school, so year 12. So we can assist people that are in that final year of school, but otherwise, if people are in full-time education, they're not eligible for DES. Another eligibility requirement is that a person must be either receiving an income support payment from Centrelink or be on an approved NDIS plan. And the person can't be working in paid employment, in open paid employment for more than 8 hours a week already if they would like to join a DES program. So if someone's already in paid employment of 15, 20 hours a week, unfortunately they're not eligible for DES. The DES program is completely free to participants and employers. Just because someone needs to be either on an approved NDIS plan, etc., or income support, it doesn't mean that we actually require any NDIS funding. So nothing comes out of NDIS. So every DES provider in the country operates under the same contract, and obviously works in a slightly different way, but it is, most DES providers offer a similar service. We're finding that there are challenges with that, and that is that, one size fits all approach. Just, it doesn't work. So, we're trying to build a service that meets individuals' specific needs. What we're also finding, and a lot of research is coming out in regards to the long-term benefit that working with people while they're still within their schooling actually has a really good long-term benefit for them after they finish school when it comes to entering the world of work and being successful in a lifelong employment. So we've started taking our services out of our offices and into schools. Now, I did mention that eligible for DES if you're in in full-time education, but we're working with schools for students that are in their final year, and we're also working with some TAFE providers that are with their students that are currently doing part-time study. So we are able to work with part-time students as well. We're finding that there's really great outcomes if we're working with people while they're still in their completing their schooling, and then there's a really smooth transition into the world of work and not this big sort of gap between ceasing education and starting employment. We also work in collaboration with other support services. Most people will have one, two, or even more other support services in their lives. So we find that working collaboratively together, where we're all on the same page and we're all trying to achieve the same outcome, it helps enormously to reaching a person's goals. And again, those collaborations. So what we've done is we've set up a little a specialist team. Like I said, most DES providers across the country, regardless of the organisation that operates them, have to work. I suppose it's because of the confines and the requirements of the DES contract. They have to work quite similarly. But we've decided at CVGT that we to set up a little specialist team as a bit of a pilot to sort of try a little bit differently, try and offer our DES service differently to what other providers offer, but also what we offer in CVGT and our general DES services. So we're piloting that where the employment mentors have much lower caseloads so that they're able to provide a more intensive service and really build a very strong rapport with each of their participants and really have the time to work very closely, and whatever support is required, they have the time to provide that. We also don't, this is probably one of the biggest things that is very different to a regular DES service, is that we don't have any participants come into our office of our specialist team. We go and meet all of our participants off-site. So that could be at one of our partner organisations. If, for example, if we're working with the students from Holmes Glen TAFE, then we will go and meet them at TAFE when they're on their regular TAFE days. Or it could be that we just meet someone in a cafe that's local to their house, somewhere that's convenient and comfortable and a familiar environment for that person, rather than getting them to trek all the way into our office. We work very, very closely with the support teams in a person's life. So that would be the staff from the partner organisations, such as Holmes Glen Teachers, for example. I'll just keep using them as an example. Also parents, families, carers, support workers. If a participant is happy for us to collaborate and communicate with those people, then we find that, yeah, it really does lead to better outcomes in the end if we're all working together. We've also just started offering our employment services to self-funded, NDIS self-managed participants. So not through our DES program. So that might be for people who perhaps aren't eligible for DES because of one of those reasons I mentioned earlier, but would still like to receive, individualised and customised employment support through us. So we have just started offering our employment services through people's NDIS plans if they would like. Next slide, please, Josh. I've just got some websites here. I'm not sure, Tish, whether they could be shared later if anyone's interested, but there is some links there to more information about the DES program in general. There is also a link to the Job Access website, which allows you to find a provider in whatever area you're currently living in. And then there's also the way to contact CVGT if you wish to do so. But I'm happy to take any questions later or now or whatever you think is appropriate.
Thanks, Bree. That's fantastic. We will continue on with our panelists, but certainly if anyone has questions, please pop them in the chat, and through our Q&A, we'll make sure we get to them. And yes, we will be sending out a post-webinar sort of pack with the recording and links and any other information that people are seeking throughout. So we can certainly include those links, Bree. Thank you. Now, I think we've managed to get Joel back online. So Joel, I might throw back to you and keep our fingers and toes crossed that the tech plays nicely. You're just on mute though.
I'm now logging in by my phone, sorry. So thank you everyone, and sorry Bree for the interrupting of your presentation then. So what I was talking about before was what we've built, and the field is a job site built by and for people with disability, actively linking them to jobs from inclusive employers. So I've heard a lot about giving choice of control or meaningful employment opportunities for those that you advocate for or represent, and the field is exactly that. It is a resource for you to jump on behalf of your client if you have one, or for someone like myself, as someone with disability, I'll jump on there and create a profile. And when I create a profile, instead of speaking about my disability, I'll speak about my accessibility requirement. So as a power wheelchair user, roll on the desk, accessible bathroom, so on and so forth, with a few more data sets. One of the features of the field is it's got an AI matching algorithm. So it'll match me to jobs based on my accessibility requirements, based on where I live, and based on my skill sets. So flip the coin to the job itself or the employer. When you as an employer set up a profile, we want you to celebrate your inclusive features or your inclusive culture, being put your disability inclusion action plan on your profile, put your reconciliation action plan on your profile. But then we can also provide you short courses, because sometimes employers are unsure whether they are quote unquote ready to employ someone with disability. And so we've got micro credentials on the course on the website for you as an employer or a hiring manager to jump on there and go through. And once you've conducted them, they sit as a badge on your profile as a bit of a value add. So we've been working with organisations from a cafe employing one person to BHP to Bunnings to Nike to Australian Grand Prix Commission. So all organisations with limited resources as well. And we're able to actually work with these organisations to meet them and understand they've got low resources, set up their profile, help them draft job ads, help them with the process when somebody does apply for a job, and then actually allow them to onboard. And earlier this year, the Australian Grand Prix Commission employed 7 people at the Melbourne Grand Prix, and they were in customer-facing roles. It was such a good story and a good success for them that they've now engaged us again to employ people in their corporate or their head office. Now, the field is unique in that when it's been built, it was built with inclusivity and accessibility at the core. So traditional job sites haven't really been able to bridge the gap or help the unemployment rate shift, one being inaccessibility of the site. So if I use screen reader tech, what's on the screen will not relay back to me based on what my software would tell me. It would be, back to front, inside out, so on and so forth. But when we built the field, it was tested many, many times through various software of screen reader tech, through various consultants with disability, being blind or low vision. There's also features on the website where if I'm going to apply for a job as a job seeker, I can select how I want to interview, whether it be face-to-face, over the phone, or virtually, because we want to put the power and the choice and control in the job seeker. We don't want them to be ambushed and allow the disability to be the reason they don't get a job. By nature, when an employer comes on site, they actually are willing or they want to employ someone with disability. So the employee or the job seeker also knows they're going into a safe environment or an environment that is willing to accommodate, willing to facilitate. And there was the mention of job access as well. We are working with job access to allow employers to modify a workplace to make reasonable adjustments. But the whole point of the field is when a job seeker has created their profile, we ask them to create a video resume, audio resume, and written resume, so that when they do apply, the employer or the potential employer sees that content. They can see the resume, they can read it, but they're also going to see the person speaking to camera. Now, it seems like a bit of work, but we've got customer support who will actually help the job seeker create their profile, who will help the employer create their profile. We have over 14,000 hits to our site every week. We've got 5,000 registered job seekers, over 500 employers on the site, and we are continuing to grow. So conscious of time, and I'm aware that I came in late as well. I don't want to take up somebody else's time. If anyone's got any questions, this is a resource for anybody, small, medium, and large. We're not here to take away competition. We're here to support you in what you do. But if anyone has questions, I'm happy to take them at the end.
Thanks, Joel. That's awesome. I mean, yeah, CPSN, I've said I've had some great success employing people via the field. So thank you for sharing that great information. And now we'll finally hear from Callum. So Josh, if you could support to bring Callum's slides up. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and welcome, and many thanks for allowing me the opportunity to speak on behalf of Nadrasca. I think even just listening to the first couple of presentations, you know, there's one word for me that jumps out, and that's probably collaboration. I'm relatively new to the employment sector, so I think I sort of still have a bit of fresh eyes on some of the challenges and where I think, you know, employment for people with disability has to go. And it seems to me, I mean, I represent a disability enterprise, so we employ people with disability here on site, and I think there's good things about that, and I think there's negative things about that. And it appears to me that we're all really trying to achieve the same goal, which is to find full-time and meaningful employment for those people that choose to have that as a life goal. So I'm representing Nadrasca as General Manager of Nadrasca Employment. And next slide, please, Josh. And we have been around for a number of years, so over 55 years now, and there's various arms to our business. Some of it is on the community and day service and supported independent living. But again, we're here to talk about employment. Next slide, please, Josh. Thank you. So we'll cover today sort of our story and very quickly go over some of our timelines. We'll talk about what our employment service model looks like, and we'll talk a little bit at the end about what our current options are and what our future employment options are. And I think we'll definitely see crossover between what we're doing here from coming at it from one angle versus what Bree's doing, and I think it'll be very obvious where Joel's website can play a part in that. Not to go into every date on this, but Nadrasca has been around since around 1967 and really began as a guess for place for people with disability. I think in a world where there wasn't anywhere for these people to spend their day and learn some skills. And really this slide for me is really talking about the evolution of supported employment, you know, if I just consider the employment part for a second. And I think with everything that's going on in the world, you know, evolution and change and, you know, modernization is really key. I think for me, very quickly coming into Nadrasca, I sort of spotted three things really quickly. It was clear that Nadrasca, and you know, we know a lot of ADEs, Waverley Industries and Knoxbrook and OC Connections in the Melbourne area, you know, they tended to be destination places for people with disabilities. So people would come, they would spend a long time here, and you know, we're just doing some awards in a couple of weeks' time for people that have been with us for 45 years. Now that's good in one sense, but if we start to use terms like a journey through organizations like us, then people being here for 45 years doesn't talk to, I think, the modern face of what we're trying to achieve. And the second thing that I spotted coming into the sector was that we tend all to do the same things from an employment perspective. very industrial versus very manufacture, pick and pack, and sometimes we have a little bit of a niche. So it sort of was clear to me that if I had a disability, or I had a child with disability, or a friend, I may have aspirations, or they may have aspirations for themselves that are much more diverse than the type of industrial settings that we have. So some of the modernization work we've been doing over the last 12 months is really trying to talk to what we consider to be the next generation of those with disabilities coming into the workforce. And I think the final thing, and I think Bree touched upon it, the transition either from a facility like ours or school to open employment is probably the nut that no one's really cracked yet. And we're all trying it from different reasons. And I think that's where the collaboration comes in, because I'm pretty sure if we're less siloed and more collaborative, we could probably as a sector have a better hit rate in getting people into open employment. I was in Canberra a few weeks ago, and I think the percentage of people with disability in the workforce hasn't actually changed for around 34 years, if my memory serves me well. So clearly there's a lot of work to be done. Next slide, please, Josh. We use the word meaningful a lot, and I've heard it 3 or 4 times already today. So our purpose and goal at Nadrasca Industry and Nadrasca Employment is beautifully simple: to provide meaningful work in an enabling environment that supports people to reach their full potential. We have teams of training and support coordination that create the development pathways for our supported employees, provide the structured learning that they need. We have people come to us with a huge range of requirements and plans that they would like to receive from us. And I sort of think of us as whether it's a TAFE college or a university, the supported employees are in one sense paying us through their NDIS funding to receive an education and a development pathway. And it's our goal to deliver that for them for whatever their life goals would look like. Foster inclusivity and social connections, offer those diverse opportunities that I spoke about before, obviously recognize the impact and achievement that our employees have. And this employment services model was built with our supported employees just about 18 months ago when we were in the middle of COVID. And some of the things that our supported employees were looking for from us by joining Nadrasca was to feel part of a team, to be recognized for the value they provide. And I won't go around everything in the purple there, but really the same goals and aspirations of any of us in open employment are looking for when we come into work. So it's our goal, and the team of people that we have here are really there to drive these things for our supported employees. Next slide, please, Josh. Just going down the right-hand side, we have salaried contracted employees, over 135 of them, with various levels of disability, some physical, some learning disability, some with cerebral palsy and other disabilities on site here in Rooks Road. We're in Nunawading. We deliver over 175,000 hours of employment and about 15,000 hours of individual trainings. And again, so the supported employees can reach their individual goals, dreams, and plans. We offer that in 4 ways, 2 of which we're currently offering and 2 of which we're moving into. So the term industry really is probably the more old-fashioned term that we have. It's common to a lot of ADEs. And that is what we consider to be the on-site employment. So we have business development managers who are out there around Australia looking for organizations that want to be involved with social procurement, have a give back to the jobs that they do, and we bring that work on site here and we execute that work. So we have 2 revenue streams. One is from the NDIS and the other one is from the commercial work that we do. The second one is an off-site employment opportunity, and again, very similar to what Bree's speaking about. We call it TalentMatch, and that's matching the employees that we have here with organizations outside of the facility in Nunawading. And we do that to allow them to have a much broader range of employment opportunities than we can provide on site. QuickBiz is microbusinesses that we run on site here, and we'll talk a little bit about what these are. And number 4, we call PremiumBiz, and these are, I think this is really the way that certainly our part of the sector is changing the most. you know, these real commercial social enterprise organizations where it's much more of a blended workforce, you know, for people with disability working alongside, you know, trained professionals to commercial businesses. Slide, please, Josh. So we actually occupy an old post office sorting office here in Nunawading. So we have an enormous facility, probably one of the largest facilities of ADEs around Australia. It's really split into three key areas. One is warehouse space. So we offer 3PL and container receiving for a number of organizations. We do a lot of commercial printing. So anything that you can get printed at Officeworks or snap printing, we can do on site here. And what employs most of our supported employees is the manufacturing, packaging, and assembly. So just as a point of note, anyone who flies out of Tullamarine Airport will be receiving, you know, water and soft drinks and soon to be red wine from the drawers on the airplane that are packed by our employees here in Nunawading. So every day we receive empty drawers, and every night we send them back up to Tullamarine. And we also do all of the marketing campaigns for organizations like Priceline Pharmacy. And we do a lot of electronics as well, which are really good, diverse jobs for the younger generation of employees that we have here. Next slide, please, Josh. TalentMatch, and this is our offsite employment opportunity. And, you know, we're offering up 3-month work programs. We provide them fully supported with our personnel. And the idea is at the start of those 3-month work programs, we anticipate the support needs of the employees are much higher as we settle them into the organization. And people can choose these for a number of reasons. One, it can be with a view to transitioning through and going into open employment with that employer, or just as many young people do who are searching for their niche in life, you know, allows us to offer many different opportunities outside of our facility here in Nunawading. So, you know, hospitality is obviously a big one that we hear a lot. Electronics, multimedia, even microbrewery, social media and influencing, you know, a lot of things that perhaps the younger generation tend to migrate towards as opposed to warehouse and manufacturing type environment. It also gives us the opportunity to place people into open employment with the pragmatic approach that if it doesn't work out, they have a safety net to come back to Nadrasca and either do another program with us or try another opportunity outside. Next slide, please, Josh. On-site microbusiness, you know, these are really interesting ones for us because these are really businesses within a business. So, you know, we have certain areas of our facility here where we run an entire business from within that little section. Some of the things that we do right now are corporate gifting, and we're joining the Victoria Container Deposit Scheme and various upcycling projects. We generate a lot of waste from a lot of the manufacturing jobs to do. And the way that we view these micro businesses, it's sort of less about the product, whether it's corporate gifting or container deposit scheme or upcycling. It's much less about the product, and it's more about providing an opportunity for our supported employees to be involved in the setting up of the business, the promotion of that business from social media to website, to taking purchase orders from customers, to picking the product, to dispatching and invoicing the product. So it really gives an environment where people can actually understand how to run a business itself, as opposed to just the product that we happen to be selling. And so again, that's fully supported with our staff that we have here in Nunawading, and is proving to be a very exciting opportunity. Most people want to join these little micro businesses as we've got them set up right now. Next slide, please, Josh. Thank you. And the PremiumBiz is one that a lot of ADs are moving towards, and I'll probably jump to the third point there, is that these tend to be social enterprise projects that don't have any reliance on government funding, so no NDIS funding. So these are purely commercial businesses, and I think we've probably all seen some of the things going on in South Australia, where they've set up these huge food processing facilities for the mining industry, which, you know, again, has no reliance on NDIS funding. So again, I spoke to Myron just a couple of weeks ago, and he said, if the government aren't going to help us, we'll help ourselves, and we'll do this ourselves. So, and I think it's probably the way a lot of us are going to be going, and moving into the hospitality, landscaping, and serious manufacturing, where we have you know, whether it's a 50-50 blend of supported employment versus skilled workers. But I think it's probably the way that a lot of the sector will go into the future. Like everyone else, that's my final slide, so I'm very happy to take any questions that people may have also. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Callum. That was fantastic and really informative. So we will shuffle into our Q&A, but just before we launch into that, I just want to remind everyone to make sure that we remember to acknowledge that everyone's different, and different employment options are really important to have to make sure that everyone has that opportunity for employment. And I really think our panelists have showcased that today with all the really great different offerings that they have. So we do have some sort of pre-submitted questions that we did promise we would get to first. And then I've seen a couple of questions come through in the chat, and we'll open up the floor as well. If you do have a question or something that you'd like to ask or add, please raise your hand, and then we can get to you that way as well. So one of our first questions was around applying for jobs and informing employers at that point in the resume or cover letter about their disability. So that can be, I think, a sticking point for a lot of people who are especially applying in open employment. So I thought maybe I'd throw to Joel first and then open up to our other panelists as well. Joel, what's your view on that?
Yeah, look, we understand that people disclosing their disability has been the reason that they're not successful in gaining employment in the past. And the benefit of coming to the field is when you actually apply for a job, one, it's assumed that you do have disability, but you don't have to actually speak about what your disability is. Like I was saying about your accessibility requirement, all you need to do is flag what your accessibility requirements are. That then allows the job seeker to identify what they need to employ you, and that's it. And then you go through the interview process and you actually identify if that candidate is the right candidate to work here. Nothing to do with a disability, because in essence, we all understand our disability. And I say we because I've got a spinal cord injury. I know how to handle that. You don't need to know how to handle that as my employer.
Awesome, thank you. Bree or Callum, did you want to weigh in on that question?
Yeah, yeah, and that's the beauty of the field is, yeah, like Joel just said, every ad that's posted on there are employers that would like to embrace employment of people with disabilities. I am absolutely right what he said. You know, you might have knockbacks if you're, you know, approaching an employer or applying for a vacancy and you disclose your disability up front. Not saying that clearly that's not right and it's not fair. I'm a big advocate for being upfront and disclosing upfront, because I think at the end of the day, do you really want to work for an employer that would have that mindset to, you know, throw your application in the bin because you've said you have a disability? Well, you might get through the interview process and you might get to that, but do you really want to work for someone like that anyway? You know, that's all about long-term sustainable employment, and we all want to work for, you know, a nice employer, so and one that's supportive. So yeah, I'm a big advocate for disclosure up front. It might take longer, but you're going to get the right employer in the end.
Thanks, Bree.
Yeah, I don't think I can add anything more to because I think you're destined to failure if it's not an employer that's really looking to embrace the candidate that's coming on board.
Absolutely, thank you. We also have a question around employment options for people with higher support needs but really good receptive language. And I thought, Bree, that might be a good place to start with you.
Yeah, look, I think, you know, there is constraints around the DES contract, and absolutely what DES can offer is on-the-job support for when people commence employment. But I suppose it's not funded in a way that could provide one-on-one support to a person in the workplace on an ongoing or foreseeable future sort of basis. So I'm thinking if that is what someone requires to maintain employment in the open labour market, then that would be funding via an NDIS funding situation. I hope that's answered the question. Sorry.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
Fabulous, thank you. And someone did put forward, and we said we'd try to get to everything around a list of resources. So as I said earlier, we'll absolutely be putting together sort of a pack of information for you and from our panelists as well. We have a few more questions. So how do you negotiate a role with an employer when you have professional qualifications and experience, but have limitations due to the impact of your disability, noting that CP can be more complex than a physical disability? So that's, I think, a question for all our panelists, but Joel might be a good place to start. I think the field is a really good solution for people in that space.
Yeah, thank you, Tisha. Look, again, I'm not going to speak on behalf of somebody with CP or who represents someone with CP, because that's not what we do here. But what at the field, we're disability led and driven in so much that when we're actually applying for a job, you can actually flag what your requirements are. And I know I've said this, but furthermore in detail, for example, for me, because I can't shake hands, when I go to meet someone on my thing, it says, can I do a fist pump? Because just makes an easier exchange. Now, I know that means nothing in regards to screen reader technology or assistive technology for somebody who would need it, but something we learned through our research was 88% of people with disability don't need workplace adjustments. Now, where your membership base falls under, maybe they do, maybe they don't, but the beauty is just by flagging what requirements you have or what adjustments you need during the application process and allowing the employer to actually make those reasonable adjustments before you actually start your employment there.
Yeah. Thanks, Joel. Callum, I think this is a good one for you. I'm just going to throw to you in advance. So someone said, my son has an intellectual disability and CP, but wants to work. Any direction, career counselling or contact suggestions? He has tried a different industry factory work, but needs more stimulation or interesting work.
Yeah, so there you go. I mean, that's certainly one of the things I've spoken about, right? I mean, the type of environment that a lot of the ADEs right now provide aren't necessarily in line with, I guess the younger generation of people with disabilities. So again, at least from our perspective, that's where the diversity of these taster programs become very important. Even over the last 12 months, we've tried to move away from the sort of pick and pack type work and get into, I think I mentioned some electronics, where the guys are putting together some fairly complex electronics for a power company down in Keysborough. So again, work that's more trade related than I guess pick and pack and rework related. So more than happy to discuss options with anyone who has tried an ADE and perhaps not seen the diversity that they need for the younger people. One thing that we do have at Nadrasca as well, and it may be common across other organizations, we do have a school leaver program called My Life, My Future. And again, this is to, in some sense, bridge the gap between leaving school and going into any sort of employment, whether it's a supported employment world with us or perhaps open employment. So, we use that as whether you'd call it a training ground or an apprenticeship is probably semantics, but it really tries to instill those disciplines that are required for young people coming into the workplace: timekeeping, etiquette, behavior, etc., and some key skills that are important. So it'd perhaps be worthwhile for this particular person looking at that program as well. Yeah,
thanks, Callum. We might try to link them through with you after the webinar. I think we've got a record of who asked that question. Thank you. We have a question from a support worker who has a client with CP who uses a walker and wheelchair, and they're wondering about how they would support their client to find work in early childhood education and help them overcome some of the barriers that employers in that space might have. So I think that's an open question if any of our panelists want to jump in first. I don't think any of us are in the early childhood space specifically, but some good advice might be warranted.
Has there been? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Joel, go.
Sorry, Callum, you go first, please.
Well, I was going to say, thank you. I was going to say, I mean, it's really, to me, no different to question number 5, you know, and I think I look forward to the future where, as human beings, we don't focus on the things that someone can do. You know, I don't think I've ever applied for a role in my life where I've been able to do every single thing with regard to the role, and whether that's just from an education or an experience perspective. So I don't think we should focus too much on the things that someone can do because of their disability. And there is no simple answer to this. I mean, it is a philosophical discussion about society, but you know, again, if you find an early childhood centre that is embracing the diversity that someone with disability can bring, then it's a sort of much easier transition, right? It's like, these are the people we want to think that.
Yeah. Fantastic point, Callum, around focusing on what you can do as opposed to what you can't, because I mean, we could look at something everybody can't do any day of the week, but that's old mentality that hopefully people are going to move away from in the future. There's plenty of barriers, and people like to identify barriers before they see opportunities. And industry doesn't discriminate. I think whether it's early childhood living, within the hospitality, within retail, it's all the same thing. Identify what the person's good at and then work with them to help them achieve that in the workplace. Unfortunately, we have not had much experience with early childhood employers at the moment, but as I said, we're only young, we're only fresh, 9 months old.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. We've got a couple more questions, but I know Kylie's had her hand up for quite some time. So Kylie, I might throw over to you because we are nearing our end of our time and I'd hate for you to miss out.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to ask probably more for Bree and Callum, but it's around the capacity to be able to support someone that has physical needs and support for like medical needs, but is intellectually quite high functioning. And my son has just left school and we've found a huge gap in him being able to get into services that can provide him the support he needs physically, but allow him to have a better opportunity than working in the warehouse kind of stuff.
Yes. Oh, go on, Callum.
No, you're good. You're good.
I was going to say, yeah, there is funding available, Kylie, through Job Access for any workplace modifications that would be needed. That's possibly sometimes the concern that potential employers might have, that, you know, oh, is this going to cost me a fortune to get this or rejig this, and, you know, so explaining that all of those things are covered by government, but if I'm just assuming of support requirements here, I'm not sure if you mean that the person you're talking about would be in need of physical support from another person, or it's more modifications or adjustments. Is that?
It's all of the above, really.
Okay.
For my son, they're not high needs, but I know that there's quite a few other young people with CP that I know that have a lot higher needs, but still would like those extra opportunities.
There is also Job Access doesn't just fund actual assistive technology, workplace modifications, etc. They will also fund sort of what they call work-based personal assistance. So where a support worker is required to go in and do some support. I'm not entirely sure whether that is just for, you know, certain periods throughout the person's working day, or if it's for the entire length of their working day. But there is absolutely that funding that's available through Job Access. Yeah,
Kylie, I think, I mean, you're describing another complexity around, you know, what we're all trying to achieve here. And it's something we gave a lot of thought to when we're looking at these offsite opportunities. One, we want the diversity of modern workplace opportunities for people with disability, but we have to be pragmatic about the level of support and what that person might look like and what the demographic of that person with this disability might look like. And it's a work in progress for us. There's no question about that. And some of the micro business opportunities that I spoke about where they're on site, obviously we have a lot larger and easier access to a support network for our employees that we have on site, where the diversity in what we do, plus the training and support teams as well to look after the support needs of the employees is perhaps something you could look at also.
Thanks, Callum. Thanks, Bree, and thank you, Kylie. Unfortunately, that is the end of the allocated time frame. I'm aware that a lot of people might have places to go and people to see. So we will make sure that if there's any additional questions that you'd like to add or anything that we haven't covered off, that will be included in the pack. But please feel free to email CPSN at cpsn.org.au if you do have any questions that you'd like for all of our panelists or a specific panelist, and we'll do our best to get those answers back to you. So thank you so much to everyone for joining, and a really big thank you to Joel, Bree and Callum for their time and support in putting this together for all of us. So we're greatly appreciative, and we hope you all have a really wonderful rest of your day and week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.